What's up, dudes and dudettes of the internet? My name's Scythe, and we are back again for another Trove. Now, because of the recent videos lately, I've been getting so many questions and so many new people actually coming into the series, coming into the game and everything like that. So I wanted to take a little bit of a break today, folks, and kind of just talk to you about all of the different classes and what you should actually do for your builds and stuff like that. I say that with quotations because there's not really any way to actually build your character, but I wanted to clue you all in just because now I've actually got a bigger understanding about all of the different characters and stuff like that, and I just wanted to kind of clue you all in and give you an update because a lot of things have changed since the last video I made talking about all the classes. So for today, folks, we're going to be giving away the information rather than giving away any prizes. Sorry about that, but I would still very much appreciate if you would rub your nose on the mouse, hit that like button for me. Helps me out very much more than you could ever know. Now, without further ado, let's just start from the beginning. The Knight. Whether or not you actually build him as a damage dealer or as a tank, I don't know, personally speaking, because he's kind of an in-between character. I guess technically you could try both, but honestly speaking, I would say go towards damage rather than trying to be tanky, because even though he does have his ultimate ability that does make him virtually invincible, it doesn't really last very long, and it's not really like viable for shadow towers or anything like that. But before we end up covering all the rest of the classes, I just want to give a quick little summary and just say that what is your end game goal? Are you trying to fight in U9 and effectively beat all the dungeons and enemies like that? Or are you trying to get to Shadow Towers? Because Ultra Shadow Tower is actually the hardest place in the entire game, whereas U9, if you end up gaining some stellar gems, you can actually handle it pretty easy. Whether or not you handle it fast is, kind of my approach to the game. Like, I'm just constantly trying to go through U9 faster and faster and faster if I ever get lucky enough to find the proper gems. And then generally speaking, there's going to be two different schools that you actually work towards in this game: damage and tanks. That's pretty much it. So the stats that you're going to want to focus on as a damage dealer is physical or magical damage, depending. And then you're going to want to go for crit hit and crit damage. And generally speaking, I would say that your goal is to get as much physical damage as possible. And then if you can, get 70% crit hit, maybe over that if you're lucky, and 700 to 800 critical damage as your base, and then anything over that is just fine. And then for physical or magic damage, you're gonna want at least 80k physical or magic damage, and then anything over that is just a bonus, right? That's kind of what you're going towards. But the fact of the matter is that the gem system itself is very, very stupid, because the way that it works, like right here, we ended up getting a guaranteed rare, which is a stellar gem with 1 star. Now, you can see that 2 stats are available. When you get a stellar gem out of the tiny ones, this is where it gets confusing for people. These tiny little gems, the best one that you can possibly get, has 2 stars on it right off the hop. And it's gonna have all 3 of the stats revealed to you. Now, sometimes you can actually get such bad RNG, like the gem system doesn't even know what it is. So you can actually get a 2-star gem that only shows 2 of the stats, in which case, throw it out, it's useless. But you're trying to get one that has 2 stars so that it has all 3 stats available, because it means that you're gonna have more stats at the end. Like, once you actually max out that gem, it's gonna be stronger than this gem right here that ended up starting with 2 stats, because at level 5, one of the level 5 interval is gonna be wasted on unlocking the 3rd stat on this gem, rather than that going towards any of the stats that are already there. Now, I know that that's getting really overly complicated, but I just wanted to kind of clue you all in on that's kind of the rough idea of how the gem system works. And then, of course, you're gonna want to focus on the gem, the stats that I talked about, where if you're a damage dealer, you're gonna want to try and get the Trinity 3 stats, which is physical damage, crit damage, and if possible, crit hit, all on 1 gem. And then if you're trying to be a tank character, because that's the other character that you can work towards, you're probably just gonna want to focus on max health, max health, max health, and that's That's pretty much it, everybody. You can go for health regeneration, but that's pretty useless, honestly speaking. Tank characters are not going to be doing that much damage. Your role is just going to be surviving and taking everything on. So the knight, I would personally say you go towards getting him as a stronger character. Here's an example right here of a 2-star gem, and this one's actually got crit damage, physical damage, and max health. Wah, wah, wah. The order of the stats on the gem doesn't matter. Even if you got crit damage at the top, it doesn't mean that that's going to be the stat that the gem is randomly going to boost more than the other stats, because there's going to be one prime stat on any of the gems. You could have physical damage in the first slot, crit damage on the last slot, and the gem might randomly decide, I'm going to start focusing on crit damage the entire time for all of the levels. So it's a completely random system. It's absolutely stupid. I've ranted about it a lot. Mostly the reason that I don't like it is because it doesn't allow you to build your character. So the only point that I'm trying to get at, and we'll get into all the other classes very, very quickly, and they're going to actually be, like, this is where the bulk of the information is as to where you want to build your character, if it's even possible. But you can see this one, crit damage, physical damage, and then max health. That would be fine. Go ahead and take that gem. You don't need to only hold out for the ones that end up having a perfect 3 stats, because you're not going to get them, honestly speaking. And you're going to need to get as much damage as possible to kill the dungeons faster so that you can end up getting more gem boxes, so that you end up having more chance to end up getting some better gems, right? And then without further ado, let's just talk about the other classes. So the Pirate Captain, of course, is a damage dealer. Even though it uses a shotgun, you're going to want to go towards magic damage, because all the guns in this game are magic damage. So you can go towards just a damage dealer at this guy. Personally speaking, one of his faults, I would say, at the end game is that his turrets are just going to target random enemies. It doesn't really matter. You do have these little guys to actually take aggro, but they usually get destroyed in like one shot, so you're gonna have to spam them down like crazy. For your gear, you can, for this guy, you're going to want to focus on all the same stats. Crit damage, second stat, is the best stat to get on any set of gear. Outside of certain characters where you can get away with, like the Lunar Lancer, you can actually have energy regen, second stat on his spear, because you're going to be using a lot of energy regen. But anyway, the Pirate Captain, where his power comes is from his ultimate ability. Especially in the late game, it can actually be extremely powerful. And although his turrets are alright, they're moderately strong, they don't really do as much damage as you would think, especially with how long they actually take to warm up. And then the Ice Sage, of course, is another damage dealer. Once you end up getting this class gem ability, you're going to want to be using it from now until infinity, because this ability is pretty much like a shotgun, causes lots of damage, and you don't really need to use any of your other abilities for the character. Shadow Hunter, of course, I know the Shadow Hunter. Shadow Hunter is just another damage dealer, so you focus on all that. The only thing that's unique about the Shadow Hunter is once you end up gaining the class gem ability, and I will argue that the Shadow Hunter still is an absolute garbage class until you get his class gem ability. So heads up, folks, he absolutely sucks and is very, very boring and very, very weak to play before you get his class gem ability. So keep that in mind if you actually choose him. But the good thing is that once you end up gaining his class gem ability, it is not affected by attack speed, even though the developers sometimes like to say that it is. Maybe it's a little piece of code that's actually missing or something like that, but no, it's not actually affected by attack speed, and because of that, you can end up swapping your 4th stat on your gear to movement speed, or just another stat that you want. Maybe you want to go for energy regen, but honestly speaking, you're just going to be using your main attack and your ultimate. Even though his right click is actually a lot of damage, you're not really going to use it that much just because of how unstable it is, let's say, because it misses all the time, right? And then the Fey Trickster, of course, is just high damage. The class gem ability, which I don't actually have, allows you to teleport and makes your little Fey Trickster character walk into enemies and explode. Now, while this actually does pretty decent damage, I would not recommend going for the class gem ability with the Fey Trickster, because that just takes away the one reason that you use the Fey Trickster in the first place, because the Fey Trickster has a passive ability where if you don't take damage for like 3 or 5 seconds or whatever it is, I don't even remember, you actually get like triple damage, right? So, that's the reason why you teleport and create a clone, because then it's going to be attacked by the enemies and taking aggro while you are keeping your damage. But if you end up getting the class gem ability, suddenly your clone's going to walk into the enemies and explode prematurely. It gets just wrecked, and then suddenly, oh no, all the enemies are on you, and GG, that's it. You ended up losing your extra damage. So that's kind of what you do with the Fate Trickster. Candy Barb is a tank. You're going to want to focus all of yourself on health, because all you're going to be doing once you end up getting this guy's class gem ability is pulling everything until the cows come home. You're just going to be holding down number 1 like a beast, okay? Because it's very, very useful, especially in Ultra Towers. He's very, very useful for that, because you hold all the enemies in place, and thus all the damage dealers can actually take them out. Chances are you're probably going to end up dying as him, though, because he's not really, like, even though he's a tank character, good luck having some survivability unless you end up getting really, really lucky with your gems. Neon Ninja, he's a little bit more of a tricky card. While, of course, you're going to be focusing on just the main old stats, you're going to want to get as much crit hit with him as possible, because his shurikens are what's going to be causing most of the damage. And if they don't actually get a critical damage attack, they're useless. Like, the Neon Ninja actually is very, very weak outside of his class gem ability, because I think it's got like 20 times your damage or something absolutely ridiculous. So he can potentially end up being the strongest class in the game, the heaviest hitter as far as damage is concerned. But you're going to have that crit hit to compensate, and then also just having raw damage and crit damage, of course. So good luck with that, folks. Gunslinger, he's another character that is just focused on the same old stats, except he's using guns again, so you're going to want to focus on magic damage instead of just physical. He's actually really, really good. You're going to be mostly relying on your rocket jump, though, so you can actually have energy regen second stat on, oh my goodness, I don't know what those are from. You can have energy regen second stat on his guns. I would actually recommend that, because you're going to be rocket jumping. This game is so broken, dude. You're going to be rocket jumping till the cows come home, because that's where the brunt of your damage is going to come from. Not to mention random charge shots while you're damaging enemies. And then everything else is going to be poured into your ultimate ability. So GG for that, because good luck if you have a photosensitivity, everybody, because the ultimate attack with this guy is absolutely insane and blinding. Like, seriously, I wish that they would actually fix the video effects on it, because it's just insane. But yeah, his normal shots are gonna do like garbage. That's why I personally rely on the rocket jump a lot. But of course, if you're just in Shadow Towers, you're just gonna be using your normal shots and just kind of waiting until you can use your ultimate, because you don't want to run in there and end up dead. Draconis, you could end up building towards a tank, but personally speaking, I would say that you're going to want to build as a damage character, especially because you're going to be reliant on the random chance of spawning one of these things with your class gem ability. And the whole point of the Draconis character is you can actually end up being super duper powerful if you can get lucky enough to spawn a million zillion of these bad boys. Now, this is where you could say that the Shadow Hunter or Neon Ninja or even the Gunslinger is a stronger character, just because you clear dungeons faster than the Draconis or Dracolite, because of the fact that you could end up like with the Gunslinger. You use your ult, you start killing stuff, as opposed to this guy where you throw down a bomb, you have to wait for it to explode, and then you have to have a random chance of actually getting something to spawn. Another character that you can actually go for energy regen second stat on the weapon, just so that you can end up throwing down as many bombs as you can. Now, an important note about like energy is that if you end up getting your energy right down to the bottom, and if we cast right there, the energy is actually going negative. So you can actually get your energy, like however much energy it ends up taking to cast this first bomb. I honestly don't even know, because it doesn't actually tell you. But when you end up throwing down your little bomb thing, you can actually put your energy into the negative, thus making it feel like it takes a lot longer for it to actually recharge. Now, the only reason that I'm getting into this is because I'm just trying to make a point that this is one of those characters where it still is a very, very powerful character, especially in Ultra Towers, because it's a very, very lengthy battle, and having more and more minions ends up making it really, really viable. But if you're going for normal adventuring, you're gonna be a little bit slower because of the amount of time that it ends up taking to actually cast those bombs and the random chance of actually getting the minions to spawn. Boomeranger, very, very powerful class, very, very powerful at the end game. However, the only problem with the end game that most people really, really don't enjoy, and that's why people actually will avoid bringing a Boomeranger, I know I do, into the Ultra Shadow Towers, is because when you end up using your Ultra ability, which we can't use right now because I don't even have a weapon on this character, but when you throw down your urn, it's got knockback on it. And then if the bombs come out of your urn, even more knockback happens. Of course, you want this guy's class gem ability because it just makes his bomb end up having chickens, which cause a lot of damage. Not as much as they used to. They ended up nerfing it a while back. But either way, the ultimate ability, like, you're gonna be knocking enemies off cliffs. So it can end up being a real chore chasing bosses all the time. Even if you're soloing in U9, if you're on one of the dungeons that's way up in the air or something like that, good luck, you're gonna knock enemies off the ledge. Then of course the Tomb Raider, build him towards a tank. Lots of people for some weird reason don't think so, but yep, you build him towards being a tank. The biggest reason why he is one of the best tanks in the game is because every time you cast that little guy, he takes aggro, and that's different than the Revenant or the Candy Barb. But either way, you're gonna want to build it, get as much health as you can, and then there is actually a very specific way that you can kind of manipulate the character so that he's invincible. But I can't really talk about that because we're gonna save all that flash stuff for another time. Just because we're not going to talk about that today, sorry to say, folks. Then there's the Revenant. Like, we're not going to talk about very specific stuff with the characters. I know I'm not talking about the Flask, but for the most part, Arcane Emblem or Martial Emblem, depending on if you're physical or magical, and then Sure Strike until you end up having enough crit hit that you don't need Sure Strike anymore. So that's pretty much what you do. Outside of the characters that are tanky, you're going to want to just experiment and figure stuff out for yourself. Revenant is another character that you're going to want to build towards max health. Used to end up being a very powerful character because of the fact that his abilities were based on his max health. So he was the strongest character in the game for a little bit. Then the devs ended up completely breaking that, moving it towards just having base physical damage. So he's absolutely useless as a damage dealer, and you're gonna want to build him towards tankiness. Now, the one thing that I would warn about the Revenant is he's extremely boring to play. You're not going to need attack speed because you're just going to be doing your shield bash with the class gem ability over and over and over again, and that is not governed by attack speed. So you could end up going towards, I don't know, whatever other stat you want, honestly, because you don't need energy for this guy. Then there's the Lunar Lancer. The reason you're going to want energy regen on his spear is because you're going to be spamming his number 1 until the end of time. Pretty much the exact same as he used to be. Way back, this guy was actually the strongest class in the game. Not so much anymore. He's still really, really good and still can end up being a very heavy hitter in the end game, but yeah, you're gonna be spamming your number 1 until the cows come home, folks. His class gem ability, it's okay. I would avoid it for one of the other characters if you can, but if you main the Lunar Lancer and you actually have a really good time with him and just spamming his number 1 over and over, go ahead, get his class gem ability, because then that's just added damage every time you turn to lunacy mode. And then the Chloromancer. Now, this is one of the only characters that's actually a little bit in between, where you could end up building your character towards damage, of course, technically, because the Chloromancer is a very heavy hitter. Most specifically, these exploding plants, they cause lots and lots of damage, right? So you could end up building towards a damage dealer, but it's going to take a lot of time to end up making that plant grow and end up exploding, especially if you're in the middle of a bunch of enemies. It can end up getting very unlucky, etc. And then the class gem ability is, as you're just throwing down plants, you have a random chance of getting a cactus to spawn. That actually does some of the strongest damage in the game, but it's a random chance again. Personally, I would actually build the Chloromancer, just from what I've seen from other people. You can build towards being a tank because of these plants and how much they actually heal, you know? That's a beautiful thing. Now, I don't know enough about the stats and malarkey about this game to know whether or not, I'm pretty sure the heal of this is based on the percentage of health that the person receiving the healing has. I know that was a mouthful of words, But I'm just saying that pretty much what the Chloromancer is going to end up doing is you're going to be standing in the fray, throwing down your plants nonstop, and trying to heal yourself out of death 24/7. You can end up building towards just being a damage dealer, yes, but personally speaking, I would say it's a tank and another one of the characters that can end up being one of the tankier characters in the game, outside of, you know, some of the other ones that end up just having a lot more health in the end. But either way, that's it, everybody. So I hope that ended up covering everything that you needed to know. As far as an ally is concerned, honestly speaking, you're only going to want to stick to a few of them in the entire game. There's just the Raptor Berserker for physical damage. You could end up going for the Chromatic Cubesley if you end up needing that extra cooldown time, but that's entirely up to you. But otherwise, Prowling Shadow or Samantha, which both end up having Life Leech on them, can actually be very, very good, especially for the Draconis, Shadow Hunter if you have the Class Gem ability. Any of the fast attacking characters are going to benefit from that. And then there is also, last but not least, the Prefect Penguin is a very, very good one for magic dealers as well. Those are the only allies you're ever going to need in the entire game. You could end up using different allies for some very specific character builds, let's say. But ultimately speaking, most of this information should be enough to actually get you to the end game, folks. So I know that this was a longer video. Sorry about that. But I did want to talk about this today in this episode to kind of clue you all in, because I know there's a lot of new people coming in, and I wanted to have a more up-to-date video that was kind of talking about what you should actually build your characters towards. Now, again, the reason that I always put in quotations build is because although you can experiment and build your character as far as all of your gear is concerned, and mostly just the flasks and emblems and the ally and stuff like that, the gem system itself being completely random means that technically you can't really build your character. It's just dumb luck. But either way, we'll say that rant I've already done plenty of times. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, everybody. Sayonara and stay epic.